Okay, guys, today I am here with my friend Rachel, and we're going to start right out. We're going to jump in. I want her to tell how her and I met and what she's doing in her life right now. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and jump in, Rachel?
Oh my goodness. So how we met, this is my version. Maybe
Okay.
you have a different version.
Okay.
How we met was years ago. I actually started following you like years ago. I'm not
I
even
didn't know
sure
this.
how long ago. It's been a while because we did GAPS 16 years ago,
Oh,
15
really?
years ago.
Are you still
Yeah.
on GAPS at all? Like any form
We
of
go
GAPS?
on and off of it. I use a lot of the stuff that we learned doing it, but we're not completely on it at this point. I think I probably found you when we started transitioning off that to a Weston Price diet. I somehow found you that way. And then, oddly enough, I found out that you were related to one of my friends who I also clean house for. And it was your aunt. And I was just like, you're kidding me. She had your book laying around or something else laying around. And she said, yeah, that's my niece. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been following her for years. I'm a
That is nuts. I thought you were just going to say that we met through Aunt Karen. I had no idea that you,
wow.
or maybe I knew, but I forgot that you followed me first. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool. I love
it is
it.
kind of cool. And we don't even live in the same town. So it was just kind of one of those wild, the world is very much smaller than we think it is.
Yeah, well, we're in the same state. I live on the
Yes.
west side near Grand Rapids, and Rachel lives up north in Traverse City.
Yes, for
How
now.
blessed are you to live in that beautiful place? Well, tell us about your family. So you have a husband and how many kids?
Yes, I have a husband and we have three girls. The oldest one is 32 and has two kids. We adopted her when she's actually technically my cousin. When my aunt died of cancer, I took care of my aunt when she was dying of cancer, Hannah also came to live with us. And then when she passed away, she just became part of our family.
Okay.
So she's 32 and has two kids that are 7 and 5. So I'm a nana. It's a blast.
Nice.
Our middle is 27 and our youngest is 26 and they're all girls. And so we had to get dogs to have boys.
I love it. The part that I think my readers are going to love to hear about is I want to know, how did you get into homesteading?
Okay, so that is an interesting story. I did not grow up this way. And that's one of my biggest things that I encourage people about because everybody thinks, oh, you have to grow up this way. I didn't grow up this way, so I can't do this. And I'm like, listen, I didn't grow up this way. I grew up moving all over the place. My parents moved. I believe that I have lived in 23 houses.
Military? Were you a military family?
No, no, they were not military. I lived in 23 houses and I went to 14 elementary schools before I moved to Traverse City.
Oh, wow. That must
Yeah.
have been hard on you.
It was really hard, but I also realized my parents did what they had to do. And it was just a series of trying to find housing and a job. And so we just moved and moved and moved. And it was really a time of great poverty in my life. And believe it or not, I look at it really fondly. So
Really?
yeah, we were really, really poor, but we did fun things. But that probably led to some of my health problems. And then we moved to Traverse City, and I was always sick as a kid. When I was 3, I was at U of M for failure to thrive. I was just really, really tiny and really sick all the time. When I was in kindergarten, I weighed 25 pounds and wore a
Goodness.
3T. I was just super small. And I missed a month of school about every year with pneumonia or bronchitis. And I just always had issues. And so I read a lot. And then I stumbled upon the Laura Ingalls Wilder series. And that kind of started my heart. In my heart, I feel like I've been a homesteader like my whole life. Like that's been my love.
So wait, when did you move to Traverse City? How old were you?
I was 11, I believe. And I was always one of those kids that would take my bike and go as far as I could go because you could do that. I think 70s and 80s kids did that. I would just go as far as I could go and find the forest. My grandpa was a DNR officer for 36 years. So he also instilled that love of nature and being outside with us. And then when I was 15, I met my husband. He came from, yeah, terrifying when we had girls. Terrifying to know that, oh, I met my husband when I was 15. And then we had 15-year-old girls and we're like, oh my
Yeah,
word, we were young.
I know. I was 16
Yeah.
when I met Kent.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was 15 when I met him and he grew up on a hobby farm. I was just like, okay, this is really cool. But so his parents are more my grandparents' age. His parents are gone. They were that Korean War generation. So to them, chemicals were an amazing thing. They rescued people from the depression by using chemicals. So they homesteaded, but they used all the chemicals. And so this is still very different from how my husband grew up. But we got married, and then these two wild kids, I was 18 when we got married. These crazy kids. By the time I was 21, we were building a house in the woods, just the two of us. We built a little Cape Cod. It took us 2 years, and that was there that I grew my first tomato.
Is that where you still are, at that place?
No, we kind of regret selling it, but we sold it because we built it by ourselves, put a lot of sweat equity into it, and we were able to sell that and buy a house closer to town for the kids, which I kind of regret selling it because we had 20 acres there.
How many do you have now?
A quarter of an acre.
Oh, this is going to be really juicy to hear how you do this then.
Yeah. So we moved from there to a different house, and then we moved here. And this house was supposed to be an investment because it was horrible and needed a lot of work. And then my health took a big nosedive. My health just kind of went downhill, and I had started gardening a lot. And so at first it became we were homesteading to save money so I could stay home with my kids because I also homeschooled them. And then it became we started homesteading for health. And that now is always my focus, is homesteading for health and eating for health. And so that's how I kind of ended up homesteading the sideways way. I married into it kind of. And his mom taught me how to can. She taught me how to can tomatoes. And then I kind of just went from there. And I've slowly acquired skills just by volunteering at other people's farms and taking classes. And
so who does most of the work, you or your husband, or both?
Oh man, it would depend on which work it is. So we kind of split things. Believe it or not, everybody looks at our yard. We have a beautiful yard we do have flowers. We have a lot of medicinal flowers and such. But my husband is the one that is the flower guy. Believe it or not. He's the flower guy.
Do you use them for like home remedies and that kind of thing?
Yeah. And we eat some of them. We found out that a lot of stuff in the yard is actually edible. Not all of it, but a lot of it is.
So when you eat some of it, it's like something you like throw in a salad?
One of the things we found out was edible was daylilies, and we will put the flowers in salad.
Oh, what's it taste like?
They're not, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they're fantastic.
Okay. What's something that's really delicious that you didn't know that you love to eat?
Gosh, you're going to put me on the spot here. One of the things that I really grew to love over the last 2 years was staghorn sumac.
What is that?
Well, when you go to your aunt's, she has them going down, and that's where I usually collect them, believe it or not.
Oh.
Go down her long driveway. There's these plants that are on the side of the road, and they have these red, they look like red hot pokers sticking straight up on these kind of trees, but they're more bushes. So staghorn sumac is, it's loaded full of vitamin C, and it tastes like lemon.
Ooh.
So I make.
How do you use that? Just in a salad still, or?
Like lemonade. It's kind of a pain because it's the berries inside, the seed inside I want to call it a berry, but it's kind of not. But the seed is quite big, so it's kind of a lot of work to collect them. But you don't need a lot. Yeah, I love it in the fall. The last couple of years, I've started doing a lot of what is called rewilding, or spending time in the woods, hiking, learning a lot about collecting things from the woods to eat or to use medicinally. And then spending a lot of time just in the sunshine, barefoot, doing all those kind of things over the last few years. And the amount of stress reduction that we have experienced doing that has been really huge.
So that kind of transitions. So tell us, how did you get better? You said that you were always sick. Tell us more about that story.
Yeah. So for me, it was food. So backtracking back to when I started gardening. So we started gardening, and then I started getting into organic gardening. And then that moved into better than organic gardening, into more regenerative permaculture stuff. And I still have so much to learn there. But we started doing that instead of just plain organic gardening. And how I healed, I wouldn't say healed, but definitely improved my health, because I still do have, like, I still have celiac disease. But
Okay.
really, I mean, my celiac disease is, I have a rare form of celiac disease and it's really, really bad. But I
Wait,
certainly,
side issue, side question.
yes,
Do you keep that stuff that I have been talking about recently from one of my favorite sponsors called Gluten Away? Do you keep that on hand in case you ingest it?
I don't, because I don't eat anything but my own food.
But what if you were, accidentally, I mean, I know it's your own, you don't ever go anywhere and eat anything from any, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if that would work for you.
Crazy, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, we could probably talk for hours about this. So what happened was, I had my first pregnancy was very normal, very healthy. And then my second pregnancy, when I was 25, I almost lost her twice. It was
Oh,
very unhealthy. I vomited just nonstop for 7 months. And by the time I was done with the pregnancy, towards the end, they threatened to hospitalize me because I had not put any weight on. I was really sick. And unfortunately, my youngest child ended up being sick, I think, because I was sick. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but I had probably developed celiac. I actually think I probably had it my whole life. Um, the origins of celiac, I don't know. There's so many thoughts in my head, but my dad died of leukemia when he was 44 and I was 23. So I believe it was just this chemical exposure. My dad was a farm kid and exposed to a lot of chemicals. His type of cancer was environmental, from what the doctor said. So I feel like all of that probably led to me having all these toxins that I needed to detox from. And then a poor diet when I was a child, because we were poor and I think we ate peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese, like from the
yeah.
box, nasty stuff.
I'm sure you were vaccinated. Who knows if that plays a part too?
You know what? I don't know why. My parents never had insurance. And at the time, I don't think a lot of things were free. So I believe I probably was fortunate because I've only had 3 vaccines my whole life.
Oh, great. What were they? Do you know?
Yeah. I know I had the MMR, the polio, measles, mumps, rubella. So I guess that would be more than 3 shots. I had the
Yeah.
polio and I had one of my hepatitis vaccines.
Still, I mean, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And then on top of it, all that chemical exposure. And I know
Okay.
once in a while my mom finds these on YouTube, so I should say this. I don't blame them at all. My parents were doing what they had to do to make a living, and they were both working all the time, and we
Yeah.
got food in our bellies. So it's not their fault that we just didn't eat good. That was what they could afford and what they did what they had to do. So when I was 29, I had gotten so sick that I couldn't climb a flight of stairs. So I had these 2 little kids running around, and I couldn't even climb up a flight of stairs. And I had gotten down to somewhere around 85 to 90 pounds. And my hair was falling out and my hands hurt and I couldn't even brush my teeth because it hurt so bad and my gums were bleeding and I was just so sick. And I had been going to the doctor. It took him 8 years to find anything.
You went to a natural doc too, or just the conventional?
At the time, just conventional, because that's where my mind was. They had diagnosed me with depression, which annoys me so much now. And anxiety, which annoys me so much
They were
now.
grasping, probably, right?
Oh yeah, they were grasping. And then fibromyalgia. And then I did end up taking some medications trying to help. And I was having really bad neuropathy and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm dying of cancer. My dad had just died of cancer. So that's all I could think of and that's what would happen to my dad. He had slowly just wasted
I wonder if
away.
it was stress too.
I think stress played a role in it
Yeah.
because losing my dad was really stressful. At that time in our life, we had 8 funerals in a year. It was just really stressful. So I think it was just everything. And then of course I was diagnosed with celiac when I was 29. And I had started making all of this homemade bread, not realizing that it was probably making me sicker. And also not realizing that I was buying conventional wheat from the store. It wasn't fresh ground and it wasn't fermented, all of the things. But I did what I thought was, I thought this is healthier. And so that's kind of where I started. And then I had a friend, and I don't know how she found it, but I had a friend who was here locally and came back to visit. And she came over with her little kids, and she had become a GAPS certified practitioner. And she said, "Have you ever heard of the GAPS diet?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Well, I think you should really look into it." And so I ordered the book. And this was like when the internet was still, you could fold a load of laundry while you were waiting for it to load. But I did find some GAPS forums and I got the book and it's literally falling apart because I dissected that thing. And
So the Natasha Campbell McBride one?
yeah, Natasha Campbell McBride. Yep.
Yeah.
So we did gut and psychology syndrome. So we did GAPS and I was like, oh my word. I didn't realize that you weren't supposed to have pain every day. I didn't realize your stomach wasn't supposed to hurt every day. I'd always lived with it my whole life. I didn't realize when you went to the doctor and they push on your belly, it wasn't supposed to hurt. And GAPS just, I mean, I was 29 and now I'm almost 49. And I quite literally can run circles around my 29-year-old self. I feel really amazing despite all of the issues they've diagnosed me with.
Yeah.
You know, they have diagnosed me with 5 autoimmune diseases. I feel like I have none other than the fact that I do have the celiac.
Yeah.
So,
well, that is awesome. So God just led you to the GAPS diet, which healed you. And then, or mostly healed you. And then
GAPS diet kind of made the homesteading because it was like, well, I couldn't, at the time, we couldn't afford organic vegetables and all this kind of stuff. So I'm like, well, fine, I'll just grow them.
Yeah.
I like to be in the garden anyway. I'll just grow them.
You know, how do you do all of that? Like, what all do you do then on your quarter acre?
So on the quarter acre, we have 3 apple trees, which
fun.
Like, oh my word, this year I still have apples. Actually, I'm making apple cider tonight. This, 3 apple trees produce more apples than we can even begin to use. So from the apple trees, I'll make applesauce, apple cider vinegar, and apple scrap vinegar, which is a little bit different than apple cider vinegar. So I'll make all of my own vinegar for the year and all that. And that's just on this little lot. We have 2 dwarf trees and then an older full-size tree, and I prune those. And then we have raspberries. I have sunchokes. I don't know if you know what those are. They are a member of the sunflower family, but they grow a tuber at the bottom of them. It's full of inulin, so it can give you some digestive issues, but it's a great
prebiotic, right?
You just have to let your belly get used to it. And if you ferment them, it's a little bit better. But a lot of people call them fartichokes because they give you really bad gas until you get used to it. So I grow that, and then I grow vertically because we don't have a lot of space. So my garden takes up most of our yard, and I grow everything vertically. So I put it on trellises, and I rotate what I grow. So not this year, but last year I grew a lot of tomatoes, and I do a lot of dehydrating. I love to can, but I realized that it's not the most nutrient.
It's still better than the canned tomatoes from the store, but it's not as good
but
as
it still kills a lot. So I've started getting more into drying, like low drying. So
what about freeze drying or just dehydrating?
I love freeze dryer, but I don't have one, and I don't have, $3,000 or $4,000 to put into one currently.
Right. Yeah.
And then, getting more into my story later, we actually want to become less dependent upon electricity. So I would rather dry. So we're using dehydrators. I have 2 Excaliburs
but those are still electricity.
They are. But freeze dryers take a lot more than those. I would really like, but this would take my husband. I'm blessed that my husband is really gifted. He can kind of fabricate anything with wood or metal for me. Nice. I would really like a solar dehydrator that he makes. I have a couple of plans that would be really cool to have a huge one. I just dehydrate so much. Almost all of our vegetables I dehydrate because
and then they're shelf stable, right?
Yeah. Especially if I dry them enough. I do can still. So I grow on rotation. So one year I need a lot of tomatoes, and since my garden's not huge, I will can enough tomatoes for 2 years. And then I'll rotate and can enough green beans for 2 years. And I'm still working on growing some things. I have not been overly successful growing cauliflower. I have been known to use the neighbor's yard.
Oh, okay.
Let me do that, and then I just give them.
Then you share, right?
Yeah. Okay, and we did have 4 chickens, but we don't have chickens anymore because we have purchased 20 acres we're going to be moving to.
How exciting!
Yes, it's my dream come true. So
when is that?
We're not exactly sure. We're waiting for the builder to get back to us.
Okay.
Probably not till 2025.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow, so that's amazing. How did you find land? Because we've been looking for land pretty casually. It's more our son who's been looking.
Yeah, it was totally a God thing. So for years and years, we thought, I didn't know how. I was home for 22 years with the kids. I didn't work. I homeschooled them. And the youngest graduated, and I was like, well, I'll go back to work because it'd be nice to actually have some money.
Yeah.
And we had neglected some things, and so it was nice to actually go back to work and pay for some things. And for some reason in 2019, and before the whole pandemic hit, I just said to him, I think it's really time we start looking for property. It's time for us to move on with our lives. Being in town was really nice homeschooling because our kids were very musical. And despite the fact that people call it homeschooling, we were rarely home. We were always like, the kids were in choir and doing musicals or playing their instruments or in ballet, and I was not home much. So I said, I think it's time that we do this, and we can use all the money I make to purchase this. And so we just started looking, and we were really disappointed. And of course, now the prices are crazy, but we were really disappointed at what our money could buy even then. We really wanted zoned agriculture, but I really didn't want a place that was formerly a farm because I didn't want to deal with remediating chemicals. And we couldn't find it. We found 1 5-acre parcel that was ridiculously priced, and the whole thing was on a big hill. And I'm like, how could I do anything with this? Well, we ran across this one, and we literally put an offer in within 5 minutes of walking.
Oh, what's it like?
It's beautiful. It's kind of hilly,
Mm-hmm.
which my husband really likes, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna
To make it a beautiful view, right?
It's very wooded. So it's 75% wooded, which we did want because we wanted our own wood lot. We really like burning wood. We've burned wood here before, and we like burning wood as a backup, maybe not all the time, but we like having that. We like the privacy of it. So a lot of times when people think of a farm, they think of a field and flat. And I don't plan on ever using a tiller. I use no-till gardening. So there's no point. I don't need flat, and I don't plan on doing, row crops or.
Wait, tell me what I've heard of this before, the no-till gardening or whatever. Remind me what is that and what's the benefit?
So the benefit is you don't disturb the mycelium. So when in the soil you're growing, it's just like your gut. Isn't it funny how the creator made it?
Yeah,
the
soil
so
and
like our gut. It's just, it's all tied together. When you till, you break up all that mycelium, and it's just not great for the soil, they have found. And in fact, a lot of large farmers, even a lot of these corn growers that still monocrop things, don't till anymore. You'll go by and you'll see in the winter where they left all of the corn up like 6 inches or whatever. You'll see it out there, and they'll just go in the next year and plant next to it. So they have stopped doing, and then, I always say grow where you're planted at the end of my podcast, but I'm not looking down on people for tilling. We actually did for the first few years. And sometimes you need to the first year at least, just because that sod is so thick. But I no longer do it. We've been here 13 years. We tilled the first year, and I have not tilled since. I did something called double digging, which is a grow biointensive. I know I'm dropping words that people are going to go, what is that? It's a grow biointensive method by John Jeevons, and he actually has a book out there, and he has a really great YouTube channel. I don't think they've updated it in a while, but I use grow biointensive, but I only did that the first year, and then after I tilled up and stuff like that. And now I just add organic matter every year, and my soil is pretty.
What do you add? Like stuff from your kitchen?
I add my compost in. I add straw amendments, but not like NPK from the store. Like I'll add green sand, or it just depends on what my soil needs. Nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Which is what which is
conventional stuff, basically.
Yeah. I don't use that anymore. I'll add bone meal. It just depends on what my soil test says I need. The longer I'm doing it, the better my soil is. And I went from sand, because this is northern Michigan. We had sand, and now I have pretty nice black soil.
Oh, that's nice. We have trouble growing things in our garden, and we're working on the soil because we know that's what it all comes down.
It's huge. It's just like the gut in your belly. And
All right. So what's going to be different when you have 20 acres again, like you used to, and you go back to that? What are you excited to do there that you haven't been able to do here?
I'm excited to have animals.
Oh, you're going to do animals. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Which
so
ones? All of them?
I don't, man, we toss around having a cow or not because our
Okay.
property is quite hilly, which can be kind of hard with a cow. I'm not sure I'm really excited about bringing in hay from somewhere else, and I would want them to be grass fed, obviously.
Yeah.
And we don't have a great pasture yet, so we're actually working on that now. We've already been planting green manures. We've been planting rye. We've planted daikon, rye, clover, and buckwheat. And then we have been crimping it. So not tilling it, but we have been rolling that out on the ground and letting it die. So that's base, and then that decomposes and goes back into the soil. And so we've been doing that now for 3 years.
First of all, where, you're talking about the flowers in the yard and the vertical growing, and now you're talking about all these things that you're going to be doing to your 20 acres. What is your main source for learning all this? Like, do you have resources you can recommend?
I don't have
Everywhere.
it's just kind of everywhere. I have books and books and books, and it kind of changes throughout the years. So it started out as organic gardening, and then it went to permaculture and regenerative farming. And so I'm a member in several Facebook groups. I read a lot. I've read, and I have a pretty large reading list. I only have time to read in the winter. And we also, so the first year we were out there, we put orchard in. I have 15 trees out there. They're not producing yet.
Oh, so
And
you've had this land since 2019 and you're
yes,
just slowly working on your goal of
yes,
living
we're
on it.
still, yeah. So we cleaned it up because they'd done some logging on it. And so we cleaned up some of those trees, and we have been chipping those and then putting those wood chips down. We have the fruit trees, and then I have something called fodder trees, which are trees that you can feed the animals. We're up to 15 fruit trees. So we have 5 pears, a couple of mulberries, and several apple trees. One of the apple trees I got is kind of special to me. It's the same apple tree that Laura Ingalls had in her orchard. It's the same company that has made it all these years. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I'll probably order another one this year just because I want to make sure I get that one because she's been such an inspiration to me. And then we have grapes started and blackberries and raspberries. We also have wild blackberries and raspberries out there, just tons and tons of them. They're just not really dependable.
Yeah.
Depends on the year.
How do the deer not eat all your stuff?
Well, right now we don't have anything, none of it's producing. So yeah.
Okay.
And then, so next year is a big fencing year, I think will probably be. We went.
Oh, yeah, because the apples are on your current property. That's right.
Well, we have the regular apples are on our current property, but we do have problems with deer here. Believe it or not.
You do?
Because they know they can't get shot here. So
yeah,
they wander. So
They're
what
smart.
we do here is we have these little bags. I believe they're white pepper and blood meal, and we hang them all over in the apple trees. And then our garden, we fence with a 7-foot tall mesh deer fence. It doesn't look very pretty, but it does the job.
Yeah. Tell us, what is a day like in your life?
Okay, so a day in my life. Oh my, on a work day or a regular day? We get up at 4 o'clock. So we go to bed. Well, in the winter, I go to bed a lot earlier just because it's dark and it's hard for me to stay awake. So I kind of live, or I shouldn't speak for my husband. I kind of live a pretty seasonal life. So in the summer, I'm always up at 4. I've been like that since I was a child. So now that my husband gets up that early to go to work, it's kind of not a big deal. And I will try to make it till sunset, which is usually like 10:30 sometimes, but I normally don't. I might make it till 9. And then in the winter is kind of our rest time. We do a lot less physical activity. I'll get up at 4 and go to bed. Like last night, I fell asleep at 6:30.
Oh, that's good. You listen to your body.
It's just what my body needs. So what a day looks like is I get up and I make him breakfast and I feed the animals. Our dogs eat raw meat and kibble. They do half and half. So I feed the animals and I'll usually start cleaning up the kitchen. I know I should probably be one of those people that cleans it up after I'm done, but I just don't have the energy at the end of the day. So the kitchen gets cleaned up in the morning. That's what
Hey,
works.
whatever works for you, right?
Yeah. So and it's usually quite a bit because when you live like this, the kitchen's always a mess. It's just never clean. It's never done. I've always got something going. And usually I have my pets to deal with. So there's usually some kind of ferment to deal with or sourdough to feed or
your pets, you call them.
Yeah, my pets. Yeah, Mr. Bubbles is what I call my sourdough. So I do gluten-free sourdough. And then I usually have yogurt or water kefir or kombucha or something going. And then I'll start and I plan the day for food usually. We eat pretty simply. We eat a very meat-based diet. I know some people might not think that's healthy, but to be honest with you, the more meat I eat and the more eggs I eat and the more fat I eat, I just feel amazing. So
I'm like that too. I think that's why I have so much energy and I feel good is because of all that food, like you said.
Yeah. So and then in the summer, it's definitely different. In the summer, I will, after everybody's done getting fed and stuff like that, I will try to do some paperwork. Once it's light out, I'm out in the garden even before work. So I'll go out in the garden and walk through the garden. I love walking through the garden with my cup of coffee and checking on all my plants. And you just check for, I'm out there, I'm checking for pest pressure or if anything's ripe and needs to be picked or if anything's looking kind of sad. So one of the other things I do in my garden is I can't think of the word, but basically the second something is done in my garden, so I cut the lettuce and we ate a salad, I will plant something back in its place. So that's another way that I grow so much is that nothing is left open for very long. So if the lettuce is getting to the point where I need to pull it all, I'll plant new lettuce. I just keep doing that. Succession planting. There we go. So I will keep doing that with my lettuces and my beans. And there's some crops you can't do that with, and I, sometimes some years, and it depends on the year. Some years I will get two crops of potatoes in, and some years I'll only get one. Man, there is nothing like a homegrown potato. I just started growing those 3 or 4 years ago, and we made homemade French fries out of a homegrown potato and fried them in lard.
Yes.
And then I made the ketchup. It was to die for. My girls were like, you could sell this. I'm like, I would have to sell it for $50 because the effort and love that went into this.
Exactly. Oh,
but man, was that good. It's so yummy. But
I bet. So how did all of that then turn into a podcast?
So what happened with the podcast was I have a podcast with Harold Thornborough. Our podcast is called the Modern Homesteading Podcast. Harold actually started the podcast like 6 or 7 years ago. I had started listening to his podcast kind of from the beginning. I had just run into it. I clean houses and I have a lot of time. Cleaning is it's a physical thing, but it's not a mental thing. And I love to learn. So I started downloading podcasts onto a little iPod, we don't have to do that now, and I ran into his podcast and then he started a Facebook group and I joined his Facebook group. And so I was kind of one of the original members. And he just said, I don't know anybody as passionate about homesteading as you are. And I wondered if you would like to join the podcast. And he asked me that last August. So August of 2022. So I've had a Facebook page kind of, and I had started teaching some classes before that and just locally and stuff like that. So yeah, I've only been doing this a year and I love it. And, I had started teaching some classes before that. Down at Baker's Green Acres, which Mark Baker. And then we're trying to do some other stuff. And I was just down at the Indiana Homestead Conference and I taught canning down there. I'm trying to do some of my own stuff here because my passion is to help people get real food, like good food. And I never realized when I started down this journey, it felt so hard to find real food. And I find that interesting now, considering what they're doing to our food now, and the food's so much worse.
Right. Well, have you ever thought about being a West Price chapter leader, or do they have a chapter leader up there?
I don't think they do. So when I went down to the Indiana Homestead Conference, I actually talked to the people at the chapter there. I got to meet Joel Salatin and, oh, I'm trying to remember their Sean and Beth Doherty. They wrote this book. It's an amazing book, but they're big raw milk people. Yeah, so I got to meet them and that was great. But so I think I just haven't had time because I came back and my garden was still in full swing and I was trying to get all that preserved. And then we just yesterday butchered the deer and got that all put in the freezer because we do all of our own butchering. I go down to Baker's and I've helped them do some butchering of steer and stuff like that. It's just learned, people that want to acquire these skills and they live in town is I have just kind of inserted myself into the farming community. And it's been decades now that I've been doing this. And so I just go and help other people. And oftentimes I don't care if I don't want to get paid. I don't want to I just want to learn. If you want, I'll weed and just learn through osmosis by standing by you. And I have learned a lot over the years. And it's just kind
What
of
a
like
great
that Bible
attitude.
verse.
And what a
Yeah, it's
great
like that
way to
Bible
learn.
verse. It is a great way to learn. It's like that Bible verse where iron sharpens iron. And
Yeah.
that's where you asked me, how do I learn all this stuff? I have friends, and when you create this community around yourself, you just meet these people that are so knowledgeable. I am not even close to as knowledgeable as so many of these people. And I just feel blessed to be a part of the community. And I just learn. I read a lot, but I don't retain a lot. It's just kind of always been me to not retain a lot. But I have friends that are so steeped in this and they have degree after degree in horticulture and science and stuff like that. And so they could quote stuff. But
You just reach out and ask them questions when you need to.
yeah. If I can't remember it or I can't find the answer, I have, Harold is a great soil guy. He's taken classes he's paid lots and lots of money for his education and taking classes. So I'll ask him questions about soil. I got other friends that I ask questions about soil and other friends that I ask questions about animals or meat. Or right now we're trying to plan the homestead. I did an interview with a guy called Nicholas Ferguson, and that's one of the things we were talking about was the fodder trees that can feed animals. And he is like an encyclopedia of knowledge on using trees to feed animals instead of relying on the feed bag. So that's one of the things we want to try to maybe not avoid, but use as little as possible.
Yeah. So you can never get away from it completely, probably, right?
Maybe with a few things you can. There are people doing it like with rabbits. They're not using rabbit pellets. They're using the trees. But then it means you can't go away. It's kind of like what we do with the dogs. We feed them half raw and half kibble so that if we need to go away, their stomachs are still okay with kibble.
Oh, that's a smart idea.
Yeah, and that's what Nicholas Ferguson suggested with the rabbits. So he gives his rabbits I think the pellets are alfalfa, half the pellets and then half his fodder. And so the whole idea behind having rabbits is not so much for us to eat them, which we will, but our dogs to eat them.
Okay.
We're going to have dogs and chickens, ducks, probably some geese, some goats at first. I don't know if we'll keep goats, but they'll help us get some of the wild blackberries going.
I want to mention before I forget, first of all, if you do decide to start a chapter, you have to get with me because we just reinvigorated. We're just like getting it going again, our chapter in Grand Rapids. The other thing is I was thinking how nice that you and your husband are both into this, because wouldn't it be really hard if it was just one of you?
I have friends that struggle with that and it would be really hard. My husband works full time, so it's definitely harder for him. And he does all of he can fix everything and he runs the tractor because we bought it's a small tractor, but it's not a lawn tractor. We bought a tractor and he is using that. He just does all the things. And then of course we were butchering the deer yesterday together. He also got really sick and food has healed him too. Yeah, he got that dumb cough that we've had going around. Wink, wink. It just took him longer than he should to recover. So we went on GAPS and we did low histamine GAPS because he was having problems with mast cell stuff. And he's doing really well after not doing very well for like a year.
Well, that's great.
He saw how that, and yeah, and he just loves being outside. He's always been an outdoorsman. He's always been a hunter and a fisher. And we'll probably still do that just because it's such a passion for us. But
Yeah.
that's the hope, is to get there. And once I'm there, I want to start teaching more. But we want animals, because I feel like we live an animal-based diet. Right now I get most of my meat from people like bakers or other local farms.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to have my own, because it's sometimes really hard to get some of my favorite foods, which is organs.
Well, that leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
You gave me a hint earlier what you might answer to this question, but so what traditional food that you know is healthy do you love that other people are not on board with, or that they still think is not healthy?
Well, I told you kidney to begin with, but I know a lot of people think liver is bad for you. And I'm like, it boggles my mind.
No, not if they're Western Price followers, they know better.
Right,
But
yeah, but kidney is one of our favorite foods.
so how do you prepare that?
So we do, I actually will make a chili, and I will use kidney and heart in it.
Do you grind it up?
No, I dice it. So I will dice it, and then and so it's almost like a stew.
Okay.
It's a chili.
Same with your heart, because I have our heart ground up with our ground beef.
I sometimes do that, but we like heart so much that I hate to grind it into our meat.
It is so good, isn't it? It's like steak. Don't you think it tastes like steak?
I do. We will actually use that heart. We will use for anything. I mean, I would slice that and fry and eat.
Yeah, because nobody notices like any flavor difference.
Yeah, kidney I feel like it has a little bit of that liver taste and a little bit of that. Is it offal or awful? I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. I would say offal, but
I thought it was awful.
It might be. I've heard of, yeah. So it has a little bit of awful taste, but it's not that bad. So we really like it. So when my husband got the deer, he saved the liver, the kidneys, the heart, and the spleen.
Oh, good. Are you going to chop all of that up in pieces and throw it in like a chili?
We'll probably put the spleen in with and we'll probably make some sausages or something like that. But liver, I make liverwurst, and we really like that. I'm not a huge fan of liver. It's been really hard for me to like liver. I've tried all of the little tricks, and our favorite way to eat it now is I make liverwurst.
Really? I can't do that still. I mean, I could if someone prepared it and it was great.
Yeah.
I had a cracker or whatever, but my favorite way
with a cracker, yeah.
My favorite way though is still grinding it up with ground beef and throwing it in.
Yeah, see, my family can always taste it, and they're like, "You put liver in here, didn't you?"
Well, I use smaller amounts. Like I don't put a lot in, so nobody ever notices. I don't even notice, and I don't like that flavor. Yeah, I put it in like chili or spaghetti sauce or tacos or anything that has strong flavors.
So with the liver, so I tend to run anemic because of the celiac disease, so I need a lot more. But the liver is like a energy shot for me, so I will make myself eat it. I don't love it, but I usually will buy. Unfortunately, I buy a supplement.
I do too.
I buy from your favorite one. I've used it for years. My doctor actually started telling other patients to use it because it's worked so well for me. And with the kidney, you probably know this, but it has the DAO in it, which helps with histamine response. Another superfood that people think is dangerous, but I have been eating raw eggs for years and I've never had an issue.
Oh, raw eggs are so good for you. Yeah, we eat those in smoothies and everything. Yeah.
There's on weeks that I'm really, really busy, I'll eat 6 raw eggs a day.
In a smoothie?
Yeah, I'll do a couple of smoothies.
Yeah. I also put them in our homemade ice cream.
Oh yeah, so do we. Yeah, my daughter makes this one ice cream. She's like the ice cream maker in the house because she's so good at it. So we'll use raw milk and raw cream. It's a butter pecan one that she uses.
Oh my goodness.
She adds extra butter, which is what makes it taste so good. And then it uses raw honey and the raw eggs.
You'll have to share that recipe.
Yeah, so I not only clean your aunt's house, I do some construction cleanups, and I do a couple of offices. So between that and all of the homesteading and stuff, I get lots of physical activity in. So I go to the doctors. I love my doctor. She's amazing, but they don't absolutely love my high fat, high protein diet. And she's like, but I can't argue with the results. And I'm like, exactly.
I know it. What's sad is they say that kind of stuff, but yet they wouldn't probably then tell someone else to eat the same way.
Right. She doesn't like that I don't eat lots of vegetables.
Mm.
I'll be honest. Vegetables and fruit are probably only 10 to 15% of my diet. I
As
love
long
them.
as,
They don't love me. You know, meat loves me. I eat it and I feel really amazing. My belly is really happy. My skin is happy. My
yeah,
brain is happy. I feel satiated. I don't have bloating. I hope it's okay to openly talk about menopause, but I'm in
of
menopause.
course.
Like doctors need to talk about this more because they never tell you what to expect. But I increased my meat and my protein intake the last year. I probably was eating 25 to 30% fruits and vegetables a year and a half ago. And then when I started looking into it, how much more we need protein as we age for muscle and bone density. And then the hot flashes started coming. When I increased my meat, my hot flashes got a lot better. My goal is to gain muscle because I want to be able to still throw those bales of hay. I want to grow old and still be one of those people that can move around. I honestly would rather die than sit in a chair for the last 10 years of my life and do nothing.